and welcome back to the Knowing Who podcast. This is episode 12, and this is all about the terror of the Autons.
Yeah, we're going back to the classics. We've not done a classic one since Pyramids, and that was the first one we did. So this is only our second classic story that we're reviewing.
Well, we did Daleks in Colour.
Oh, we did the Daleks in Colour. Yeah. So this is the third classic story we're reviewing. But
I feel like we've done loads more, and it's only 3.
Yeah, and it's sort of a bit more fresh for this one, for you, because this is kind of, I would say it's the first like proper classic story we've done, because Pyramids we added Tales of the TARDIS to go back to.
True.
Daleks in Colour was a cut down kind of new series style, whereas this is our first 4-part classic story.
Proper.
When we were making the schedule for this, you sort of went, I have no idea what classic stories to put on there, so I just chucked a few suggestions on, and this one kind of seemed like a good one to go for.
Okay.
But yeah, before we go into it, there's like a tiny bit of news is that the new sonic screwdriver's out. Yeah. It's getting into people's hands.
Yes. I mean, there's been, I think I've not really been paying too much attention to it because I don't really want one. It's really expensive. How much is it? Like 45, 50 pounds?
50 quid.
And that's for the limited edition one. Then there's also, has the regular one been released as well?
I think the regular one is at like up pre-order.
Right.
But I think that's like 30 quid. It's an expensive
And then I've been
affair.
seeing, I'm on a Discord group with a load of nerds. A big massive Discord group with loads of people. You know, after DoctorWhoToys.net died a death.
Has that died now? Is it literally gone?
It's
totally?
gone. Yeah, it's completely
that's
gone.
A shame.
It's really sad.
I used to love that.
But I'm on. It's got hundreds of people in this Discord chat, and including like Gallifrey Customs and a couple other people who get stuff early. But it's not a secret thing. Like, I'm not leaking anything. But someone has noticed that some of these screwdrivers are shipping either with mistakes, or like bits haven't been painted, or gems are different colours, or things like. I'm not really completely. Don't trust me on this. I've seen a couple of pictures, so I thought that some people had ordered the premium one and got the regular one, or maybe the premium one just has loads of faults with it, and some of them aren't finished. I don't know. So write in, listeners, write in and update us.
One thing that I thought you had a really good idea about was to differentiate the standard and the online one a bit more.
Yeah, because in the series. We see 2 Sonics?
I think we see 3, you know.
Right.
We definitely see...
There's the blue one, which has been released, which there are 2 releases of, the exclusive and the boring normal one.
Yeah.
And then I think it's in Rogue, and I thought in the Beatles one, Devil's Chord, I thought they were the same colour. But...
They are, yeah.
So we only saw 2 then.
Then in Empire of Death, I think it's yellow.
Oh, okay.
Like a gold
colour.
So
there's a red one in Devil's Chord and Rogue, and then there's a yellow one in the end, in the finale. So yeah, maybe make the exclusive one red or something.
That's what I was thinking.
They look
the online
very
one
similar. Because
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, I can't tell the difference between them." And because they're literally the same thing.
It's just, there's a more shiny paint job on the...
Because unlike
the
14th Doctor's one, where the entire thing is chromed and chromed to the max, this one is just it's all shiny. Like, even the normal one is still shiny.
Yeah,
because it has to be.
Well, like a normal Sonic kind of
so I
shininess.
don't know. Maybe make the exclusive one red or yellow. And then I think in Unleashed we saw like hundreds of different colour variants. So
I'm sure we'll have plenty more.
Do one of them. Who knows?
Yeah, well and it also would, from a marketing standpoint, make a lot of sense, because people are going to buy that one and then they'll want the other colour as well.
Yeah, because I feel like with this one, a lot of people are happy to get the normal one, whereas with the 14th screwdriver, like yourself, really wanted to get the shiny one.
Well, you say that. I think the normal one actually looks more accurate paint job wise, because in the show it's not really chromed. It's just the sleek silver.
Fair enough. Like machined.
Yeah, but the first one they released was that shiny one, so it was like,
that's the
do
one
you
everyone
wait
wanted,
for a month? So so interesting.
And still no dollies.
Still no dollies, but who knows?
I think the leading rumor was it was going to be screwdriver, and then a couple of days later we'd get dollies. We have not got dollies
happened
yet.
Yeah. So I'm praying for it.
Every time I see something on Twitter, I'll just send Miles a message saying, "Oh, something," and then nothing happens.
Yeah. There was one earlier this week where you sent me something and being like, "Oh, here we go, this is happening," and then 5 minutes later it was, "Oh wait, ignore this. This is the Sonic."
Yeah, it's fine.
So yeah, but aside from that, nothing much to report.
Nothing major. I can't think of anything.
No. So in that case, I think we should just take a
jump
trip back
right in
to 1971 for Terror of the Autons. Now, before we go into it, I've brought along the Target book.
Go on, do a page flip for the listeners.
There
Nice.
you go. There
He's
you
got
go.
an actual book here with him.
This is a first edition as well. I didn't even realise when I bought like a bundle of them. And I've actually read this one as well. I read it on a holiday, and it was lovely, classic Targety book sort of stuff.
So when would that have been published?
This was published.
First page.
Let me see. 1975. So 4 years after the story went out, but when the Target books were properly getting sort of into, they're sort of really getting into things. But I thought, let's start off with, Ben, as an introduction. I'm going to read you the blurb for this.
My goodness.
This is classic. This is a classic intro from Terence Dicks himself, I assume. The evil master leered at the Doctor and triumphantly pointed out of the cabin at the window. The many-tentacled Nestine monster, spearhead of the second Auton invasion of Earth, crouched beside the radio tower, part crab, part spider, part octopus, very much not what we saw in the episode. Its single huge eye blazed with alien intelligence and deadly hatred. Can the Doctor outwit his rival Time Lord the Master and save the Earth from the Nestine horror? Who knows? We'll find out.
After watching that episode, none of that screams the
What
thing
you
I just watched
Well,
at all.
Welcome to the world of what I assume it was like, because there was predominantly no repeats really, no
True, I
VHSs.
guess, yeah.
People would have read this and then watched Terror of the Autons and gone, "That wasn't what I read in the book." A lot of differences, but regardless, Terror of the Autons broadcast 2nd to the 31st of January 1971, starring Jon Pertwee, Katie Manning, Nicholas Corney and Roger Delgado and many others, and written by Robert Holmes, who wrote Pyramids of Mars, although it was credited to the pseudonym Stephen Harris.
Right.
But there you go. So, Ben, as someone who's kind of using this podcast experience to dip into classic Doctor Who properly, I want your initial first thoughts for this.
I'll give you my very first initial thought.
Go on.
That I got it was a sort of general thought from over all the 4 episodes, the whole story. It feels very much like a student film.
Wow, interesting. So this could have gone either way. It could have gone, wow, that was great, or
I genuinely don't know whether this is regarded as a good story or a bad story, and I cannot tell myself after watching it whether it's good or bad.
Well, let me preface this with the reason that I wanted to watch this one, or why I wanted to show you this one, was because I thought, let's pick a story that's got a number of firsts. It's the first Master appearance. It's the first story for Jo.
Is this the first Master story?
Yes, it's the first Master story ever.
Okay.
First
Jo.
Yeah, it's weird. It's quite an understated intro. We'll talk about that later.
I mean, obviously I know who the Master is. So.
It's got all the sort of the hallmarks for the Third Doctor era. The Brigadier unit is very much, because a lot of people would say, go for Spearhead from Space, which was the first Pertwee story, but that's kind of like it's not a very typical story. Yeah, so you weren't a fan then, would you say, overall?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I enjoyed watching it. It wasn't... So, what I had with... I've completely forgotten the name. Pyramids of Mars.
Yes.
Pyramids of Mars. What I had with that was... I'd already watched Tales of the TARDIS, and then we went back and we watched the actual version, the original broadcast version. And I didn't want to watch it.
Right.
But I guess that's partially because I'd already watched it.
And you'd seen it so recently.
Yeah. But with this one... I didn't have that. I watched them all over a day and a half. You know, I did watch them all pretty succinctly.
Yeah.
And I never felt bored, and I never felt annoyed or like I had to do it, which I did last time. So I guess that's good.
That's something.
That's something to go with.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was really. I don't know.
Interesting. It's going to be interesting.
I said, student film. Like the edit. Yeah. The overzealous green screen use, the sets and acting.
Yeah.
I mean, but that is what classic Doctor Who is, and I'm no stranger to that.
It is, but it's kind of, I think, in a way, like I was saying, it is a typical story of this era in a lot of ways, and you've got all the sort of the classic people behind this one. You've got Robert Holmes writing it, who is like, in terms of the classic series, kind of your Stephen Moffat, really, of the classic series. You've got Terence Dicks script editing it. You've got Barry Letts producing it and also directing it. So he was the one. Him and Terrence Dicks basically oversaw the whole Pertwee era.
Right.
And that's why at the end of this story, there's not a directed by slide. It just says produced by Barry Letts because he wasn't able to credit himself twice.
I didn't even notice.
I wouldn't have thought. I was thinking this. I was like, I'm going to say this to Ben, and Ben will be like, no clue.
I'll be honest, I didn't even watch the credit. The credits rolled, and I went, okay, cool, finished. I didn't even watch the credits.
So yeah, I mean, how about I direct you into some things, and we'll get your thoughts from it. So Jon Pertwee, let's start with him. Have you seen any Pertwee stories prior to this?
Yeah, so I've seen the Sea Devils.
You've seen the Sea
Devils?
Devils?
I think I've seen most of, if not all, of Spearhead from Space.
Okay.
So yeah, I know Pertwee.
So you're aware, you've seen bits of Pertwee, you've even seen The Odd Story.
Yep.
But this is probably the first time that you've actually sat down and gone, right, I need to think about this.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think of him as the Doctor?
He's giving it large. He's having a great time.
Yeah. He's settled in, because this is the start of his second season. Yes,
exactly.
So.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Like I said with Pyramid of Oz, the Doctor's kind of a dick.
The Doctor of the classic series is sort of... It's more kind of like the ends justify the means in some ways with the Doctor of the classic series.
Yeah.
Certainly Jon Pertwee's Doctor, who would really come to blows with a lot of characters. You know, he'll bark at people. He'll bark at Joe a lot.
Yeah, I noticed that.
He'll bark at the Brigadier, but I quite like their bickering. I think that's quite nice.
Yeah, I did like that as well.
Any civil servant who comes in, there's one in this story, someone from the Ministry who he'll just absolutely demolish.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, yeah, on the outset, this is a kind of a nasty character compared to what the Doctors that we're used to of, the 10th Doctor being like, I don't like guns, get them away from me. And here's Jon Pertwee going, blow them up, Brigadier. So it's kind of, it is that there is that sort of, that difference when you come to it from that perspective, I suppose. But as the Doctor, did you see him as, yes, this is the same kind of character?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like you said, the 10th Doctor saying, I don't like guns. He's still very much that character. Yeah. He has a lot. There's a bit where the Brigadier says, I'm going to blow them up with the RAF. Mm-hmm. And then the Doctor's like, don't do that. That's stupid. And then the Brigadier says, nah, I'm going to do it anyway. Not in those exact words. But, so it is still those same character traits are coming through.
And there's that moment when there's the bomb that the Master plants and the Doctor manages to smash that weird contraption the Master sets in a trap.
That was a very good little sequence.
Yeah, and he takes that back to the lab and analyses it and whatever, and the Brigadier's like, oh, can't wait to get the boys in the lab to test that out and see what weaponry we can come, and John's like, oh, well, good luck, because I've burnt it out and, your weapons are bad enough as it is. So it's like, you're right, the same morals are there. It's just kind of, perhaps with that angle of, the rough and tumble isn't always kind of shied away from for these stories, and certainly the third Doctor stuff when he's working with a military organisation, it's going to happen, I suppose. But yes, it is a very different kind of Doctor and show when you've got those kind of that different.
It is very different, and the fact I know that most, if not all, of the third Doctor's time is set on Earth. So going into it, you have to know that as well. Yeah. Because obviously the TARDIS is there, but he doesn't use it ever, except for blowing it up in one scene.
Is he? Yeah. Is it? I think it's. Is it once or twice in this story?
He goes in a couple times, but he never does anything. He just sort of walks in and walks out.
Singing as well. I don't want to set the world on fire.
And then he blows up everything. Twice he blows up.
Yeah, because he blows up the second time, comes out, and Joe's like, "You're being childish." What's wrong with being childish? I like being childish. Which I really love.
It is, it's a really nice moment. I did like those little bits, but then also there were bits, and actually there were bits where I could see. I sort of thought I can see Russell watching this as a kid, or maybe a couple of years down. I don't exactly know his timeline, but I can see someone watching this as a kid and then turning it into the program that I'm used to, because there's lots of silly bits. But in the new series, they do the silly bits, but instead of treating them like silly bits, they treat them like very serious bits. And I can't remember exactly what is said, but there's a bit where the Doctor explains the technical properties of something, and I could see Tennant doing that completely seriously, and then people going, oh yeah, well, that sounds right, whereas in this everyone's like, oh,
ridiculous.
So it is, like you said, it is essentially the same program which I can see the bits and pieces. But then also there's just really weird cuts that are just real, and like there's a shot of Jo in the car and it zooms in on her face really, and then it cuts away to something else, and then there's a bit where people are so wooden. the
senior Farrell Senior.
Yeah. It's horrible. He's just, what a character.
Yeah.
His wife goes to make the coffee and he's dead
in her CSO kitchen, in her, with the
everything is CSO
fringing around. Yeah.
Oh, I assume it's a budgetary thing.
Well, that's interesting. I think we should talk a bit about this. So this was directed by Barry Letts, as I said, the producer.
Yeah.
He absolutely loved CSO.
Yeah. So I know the vague history around it. I know that it's sort of pre-green screen. It's the same technology.
I think it's a yellow screen.
It is yellow.
Yeah.
It's the same technology, which essentially is take this color and remove it.
Yeah.
For those who don't know anything about green screen, but I'm sure you do.
You're keying out
stuff, yeah.
Stuff.
But from what I understand, from what I've read into it in the past, it was just before like chroma key became really normalized. So at the time, this was cutting edge.
The production team thought, well, this is great. This saves us so much, because there'd be scenes like, when the Master nicks the Nestine consciousness ball in part 1. There's a brief sort of cut to a museum, but
I hated it.
Rather than building the set, they just
hated that.
have a shot of like a high angle of the thing being broken into, cut to a shot of a policeman on yellow screen back in the day, going, "Oi, what are you doing?" Bang, and then there you go.
And the background was just a photograph of the National Transport Museum or something.
It's very economical.
Yeah.
You can see why, from a production standpoint, they're like, "This is fantastic. This is great."
And maybe in the 70s, on a awful little CRT 70s, probably isn't even in colour yet, because not everyone had colour.
Yeah, very true. A lot of people
probably looked fine.
And a lot of people who watched this like subsequently on like bootleg VHSs in the 90s could only get this one in black and white, because the colour copy was like an American NTSC.
Right. I did
thing.
think
So
that some of the formatting was really weird. Like, it's a really technical stuff.
Yeah.
The very first episode has really weird black bars on the top and the bottom. It's not true 4x3.
And the sort of there's fuzziness to it. It's kind of a mucky looking story, which is why when I watched this for the first time, you compare this to Spearhead, which is very crisp, and that was shot on film, so it's all the colours are retained there. Whereas this is kind of, it uses
some of it's on film.
Some of it's on film, yes, but that film has then been put on videotape,
yeah,
and the downgraded in quality, and then the colour copy they've got to mesh with it is an even lower quality. So it does.
Some of the colours were really weird.
It's very mushed.
There were bits where like the Doctor would fall to the floor, and all of a sudden his face was black and white, and everything else was in
sort
colour.
of red jacket would sort of bleed in through.
Yeah.
So that sort of was a kind of a bit of a barrier when I first watched it. I was like, oh, this looks really good. And it's such a garish story. Like, there's so much colour, from the circus and the
circus with the
AUTONS
live elephants. Oh, that made me cringe.
Yeah, that's a bit problematic. Absolutely. But yeah, so there's the
wasn't
kind of
very long ago as well. God.
In terms of how it looks, yes, this is very much kind of CSO Nightmare colour, sort of mucky. So 100% it kind of has that look. And also you sort of touched on there, the kind of, maybe at the time it looked okay, but I have a memory of watching, I think there was like a documentary on the Blu-rays where they went, Mark Gatiss and people were on it and talking about, the Third Doctor era. And I think Stephen Moffat says on that, he's like, oh yeah, people think that we watched this stuff and thought, oh my God, that's great, that's cutting edge. We didn't watch. We were watching that thinking, that's hokey, that's rubbish,
Yeah,
so
I sort of had that feeling throughout.
So it's kind of, it's not that, at the time this was Space Odyssey. They'd seen movies.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying that. It was just better. It was different to what they, because most kids' programs would have been set contemporary, black and white puppetry or whatever. Whereas this was big, this was huge, this was fancy, this was sci-fi.
Yeah. And it kind of does take away, because you've got shots like Jo in a phone booth, which is CSO'd, and then there's that weird
on top
stuff
of the radio tower, and they'll zoom in on someone's face, and the background stays exactly how it is, and everything else zooms in.
And the unit troops sat watching a van which has been shot on film on location while they're in studio with a CSO thing projected like behind them. So it's.
Or just every window in a car.
So many windows.
I'm at least glad that it was a moving image in the cars, because there was a chance that it would just be a still, and the guy was just sat there pretending to drive a motionless car.
So
and the
doll,
that was horrible. Because it would be a shot of a little man on the back seat of a CSO'd car, and he'd be waving his arms about, barely able to sit up.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they just have someone off screen holding the doll, throwing it to camera.
Well, do you know that scene is in the lab, right? And they just use the doll because apparently the guy in the costume, they did some stuff with him and he just passed out because he was too hot under these studio lights and all this sort of stuff. So they had to, for the lab scene, they were like, well, we can't CSO this. So we're just going to have to use the doll and chuck it at Katie Manning.
It was hot. The way he walked with his arms, oh, God, it was the worst.
For the Blu-ray, they did a CGI recreation of all that stuff. And they've tidied up the fringing. It looks... It's a lot more accessible.
What's this story even called?
Terror of the Autons, Ben. So
you keep talking while
there might be some comparisons online, but I think that maybe it was a challenging choice to choose because it is that stuff can provide a barrier for entry because it does look. It's so obviously fake, and it's hard. It's very hard to put yourself in that mindset and go, imagine I'm back then, and try and view it from that perspective for sure.
Doctor Who Terror of the Autons effects comparison.
Yeah.
From Dan the Man 2150 AD on YouTube.
Oh, are you looking at the little?
I'm watching this.
Yeah.
It's a 9-minute video. I'm going to skip through it.
Skip to the troll doll because it was quite good from what I remember. They changed the whole scene in the lab and stuff, and the angles and everything, and it works so much better.
Oh, this has just happened as well. There's a Time Lord at the start.
Yep.
He just pops in.
Yep.
What the hell?
Bowler-hatted Time Lord.
Yeah.
So do you not like? I love that.
There's a TARDIS sound effect, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, so a TARDIS is gonna, and then a guy just pops into existence, and then he's like, oh, sorry, I'm floating.
And then he hovers closer.
What the hell?
Yeah. It's fab.
Oh, at that point, I was thinking this is going to be an experience.
It's very trippy, isn't it? This story.
It does get better.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Here's the troll doll. He's in the back seat of the car.
We're getting Ben's live commentary here of...
The background looks better, although it does look more like a still. I think the original actually is better.
Wow.
There's the CGI fella.
Do you think it looks any better?
It looks better, but it looks so out of place because it's CGI.
That's another thing. You do have to try.
The original.
But they are getting so much better at that stuff. Like,
oh God,
they'll blend it a lot better.
He's back. He's on the mantelpiece.
Mm-hmm.
The mantelpiece shot looks a lot better.
And they'll have cleaned up
because
Mrs. Farrell in her kitchen as well.
The entire set for the mantelpiece shot is CG compared to the original, which is a CSO shot. Still, probably with this little fella.
Yeah.
That reminds me. Going through this is bringing back so many memories of this morning. And when he's killed Farrell Senior, and then he runs away. He's so much he's so much smaller in that one shot because obviously of the way they shot it, and it just looks so bizarre.
Yep. And it's a disgusting looking thing as well.
It's horrible.
It's really, that creeps me out. As a kid, I really didn't like that. That was terrifying.
Oh, and here he is in the lab.
But yeah, anyway, they tried to make it better, and from what I remember from watching it, because for sure that the effects does kind of take you out of this story because you're like you're very much knowing that is,
and it's instant as well. It's instantly like, oh God,
pretty much. You've got a quite a nice. Well, let's
and in
talk
episode
about this,
3,
right?
Actually, there's a lot less of it.
There is a lot less, and yes,
which I thought, okay, they've saved their budget for the quarry scene. Yeah, basically for all the film stock
because the film, the story does open on film in the circus. Problematic.
Yep.
Animal stuff aside, we know that's very much an issue nowadays, and I'm sure they'd be very aware of it now. But anyway, we get a lovely film intro of the Master, who you didn't know this was his first story. I probably should have told you that.
Yeah, I was waiting. I was like, okay, the Master's here. Like,
so let's talk about Roger Delgado. What do you think of him?
He's exactly who I think he is.
Yeah.
Like obviously the Master in the new series is very different.
Yeah, John Sim is much more kind of Joker-esque camp kind of.
And I love John Sim.
I love John
Sim.
Sim.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Michelle Gomez as Missy is also completely different. A bit sort of the same, and then Sacha Dhawan is a bit more John Sim and a bit more crazy and a bit more loopy. But
he's the Bond villain master.
He is. He's the spy master.
Yeah.
Evil Dan theme. I'm just flashing back to hearing that in the Royal Albert Hall.
That was
Evil Dan.
Yeah.
What was I talking about? Roger Delgado. So there's a bit in series 3 where Tennant says, "Oh, he's always been a bit hypnotic," He is very hypnotic in this story. Why he never employs that again later on in the new series will baffle me.
It's very interesting how he doesn't... Power of the Doctor. Sacha Dhawan's master sort of...
Oh, does he hypnotise the Russians?
There's a lot of that at the start,
right.
Yeah. But you're right. For the master not to really do that at any point till then in the new series is...
Yeah.
And he's got his own little theme for when he hypnotises people as well. The
yes.
Dum, dum, dum,
and sometimes the music in this story is way too loud.
It's very electronic
and drowns out
piercing.
all the audio.
But I love it. I think it's kind of... There's this sort of the musical stabs, you know, like when an Auton kills someone or the Dolls killed someone and it goes BAM and it's like, oh god, you know.
That's fine. And
it's eerie.
In what would have been the end of the previous parts, is actually then in the next part, the opening, it is some weird musical cue that isn't. It's very similar to the intro.
But they kind of use that. But yeah, Delgado. I mean, I absolutely love
some of the cliffhangers. Sorry, some of the cliffhangers. We'll get to it. But
cliffhangers is something I do want to talk about.
We'll leave it then. But
yeah,
oh my god.
But no, Delgado, fantastic. I think that you almost take for granted how good he is. He's captivating. He's charismatic, and his stare. Yeah. Not just when he's hypnotising people, he's really creepy, effortlessly so. He's just got this amazing look, and he is the master. Like, you can see why. I mean, Barry Letts, the producer, was like, we need someone to play this arch nemesis of the Doctor. I know who it's going to be, Roger Delgado. There you go. No one else was considered. It was just him. And you can see why. He nails it. He's so good. The only bit I'm slightly iffy with is what happens in pretty much every Pertwee Master story is that at the end,
he gets away.
It's within 30 seconds, the Doctor's gone, help me. And the Master's gone, yeah, sure, all right, and then helps him save the day.
I thought that at the very end, but that's also very new series. Like, the Master does that.
In a way, I suppose so,
Not in End of the Time Lords, Last of the Time Lords. Not in that story. But I think in every other Master story, I think, off the top of my head, that does happen.
Basically, yeah. So I suppose it is sort of a Master
I wasn't
trope.
shocked by it.
Yeah.
Especially because they do sort of set it up at the start when the rogue random bowler hat Time Lord shows up and he goes, well, he did better in school than you did, Doctor.
Yeah.
So like they're sort of implying that, oh yeah, they're clever and they know the same stuff. So at the end it makes sense that
he's very much, as was it sort of envisaged, he's the Moriarty to the Doctor's Sherlock Holmes. You know, it's that kind of dynamic, and I think it works so well. I just love him and the dynamic he has with Pertwee. I think in episode 4, that confrontation they have in his lab, and
which is the first time they meet as well.
The first time they meet. I mean, they've had the phone conversation, but that was very brief and
obviously
not
in canon they know each other before this. But
this is the first on-screen confrontation.
I was kind of shocked that it took so long
to get there, right? Yeah. And it's a beautiful scene, and I love how it basically opens with the Doctor going,
he just
like...
rocks up as well. He just walks
the Doctor
down the
says,
stairs.
you know, how did you get in here? And the Master's like, oh, don't be so trivial. You know, like, just move on. Like, just accept it. And it's so
Maybe he
well
used
done.
his Time Lord floating powers and
Maybe he
floated up
did.
to the roof.
Maybe he used the Time Lord floaty energy.
I think the Doctor should use that more often. I think the Doctor should float more often.
I think the Doctor can... In the Pertwee comics, I think he can levitate. Genuinely, look it up. Okay. The Doctor can levitate as the third Doctor.
I'm going to Google this, but yes, carry on.
But yes, so them two, that is one of my favourite scenes in the whole thing. And that great line that Delgado has of, death is always more frightening when it strikes invisibly. Like, it's so well written, so well played.
There he is. He's levitating.
There we go. Yeah, is it him side on?
He's side on, yeah.
We'll post that on the Twitter.
There, I appear to have the mental power to do it. How exciting.
How exciting, yeah. I mean, there's a few bits like that in the Pertwee where he can make objects vanish with pure will. So, you know.
Anyway, interesting.
Lovely stuff. But yeah, Delgado, fab.
Yeah.
What about Katie Manning as well? Jo Grant.
I mean, so I've met Jo Grant.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you have
Jane.
Experienced her in Sarah Jane. Yeah.
And she's the same person. She's a bit less eccentric because I think as she got older, she got more eccentric, seemingly. She goes travelling and she goes to all these wonderful places. And I assume over the course of this series, and I don't know how long she stays on. Is it only the one series?
She's the third Doctor's sort of iconic companion.
I know Sarah Jane will come in before
you've got
leaves.
Liz Shaw kind of for the first season, series, and then Sarah Jane for the last, but Jo Grant is there for the third Doctor's main bulk of series.
Cool. So I assume she'll develop a bit more, but the
100%.
Yeah.
When you get to the Green Death, when she leaves, she's a totally different character.
Yeah.
In obviously the development sense,
Yeah.
not just like they've decided
She's
to
just
make her
someone
a
else.
scientist. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
no, because
yeah.
in this story, it's very much everyone is really sexist towards her.
Very
dismissive.
The attitudes are
They
very.
do
yeah.
not care. They're like, why on earth have you brought this girl in here? Essentially, is what the Doctor says.
This
For
nepo
the
baby.
majority, yeah, literally. So, like, they say she did her A-level in sciences. She didn't pass.
But that's a very good line.
That
though,
was
isn't it?
very
When he said, I thought
funny.
you were taking science on A-level. I didn't say I passed. That's classic.
And then
that.
she also somehow did like
Escapology.
magic.
Yeah. But that's a great degree to do.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Although didn't the third Doctor know Houdini or something? I guess he's not met him yet.
I can't
Because we
remember
discussed
which Doctor
this.
first mentions Houdini.
Because in our very first episode, of course, Shooty mentions it, and then I went back and found it, and I think 3 was mentioned, but this could just be he might not have met him
He
yet.
seems like he's a very much a name-dropping Doctor. I mean, he does it in this of some Tubby Rowlands or someone. So he's that kind of.
Yeah, was he a
Doctor.
real person? That guy he
I
name
don't
drops?
know.
We've no idea. I'm not going to Google. I'm going to put my phone down.
Don't bother googling that. But yeah, he'll always name drop Napoleon and all these kind of characters. He's kind of that kind of gentleman's club.
Yeah, he literally says, I was in the gentleman's club the other day.
Literally,
Don't
yeah.
know what
Which is
he's-
why people have an issue with the third Doctor. Sometimes I think they think he's a bit like too establishment. But I think if you watch the Pertwee era, he's very much kind of dismissive of
Well, he
that sort of
hated the
stuff.
establishment in this one.
Exactly.
Because that fella comes in, he's like, you are useless and your boss is horrible and I'm best friends with him and I still hate everything he does. So, like...
And I love that. That's another moment I love as well, when that
Came out of
ministry
nowhere
man
as well,
comes
that
in.
fella.
He
just
yeah,
rocks up.
and he then never comes back.
Yeah.
But the moment when the Doctor defends the Brigadier, and the Brigadier has a moment where he's about to go like, "Oh, hang on, Doctor, you shouldn't probably say this to him," but he just lets him carry on, and the Doctor's, he's there standing up for his mate, and it kind of shows, the Doctor and the Brigadier, they do argue, and they argue a lot in this, but like ultimately they are close and they will defend each other when it comes to it. So I love that scene. I think that's a really nice moment. But yeah, Jo Grant, she does have a lot to do in this story, though. To be fair,
She does, you're right. And she
For a
takes things into
companion
her
of
own
this
hands
era.
and she sneaks onto Bessie. Is it Bessie?
yeah.
Bessie. She sneaks onto
Yeah,
Bessie. I had a moment of panic there. And I
Yeah.
thought, is it Bessie? No.
At least you didn't say the Whomobile.
That's the next one.
Yeah.
The space car.
The space car.
What was I going to say? Yeah, she sneaks onto Bessie and she does all this detective work and she is spotted, to be fair, and she saves the Doctor and she bashes a glass over the strongman's head. And so yeah, she does have a lot to do. And if she wasn't there, the Doctor would have been foiled, which I guess is the nature of most companions in most stories, I suppose. Yeah, nothing against Jo Grant.
Yeah, no, I love Jo. Before we jump to the titular characters, who I'm really excited to chat about, we've kind of mentioned briefly some of the guest characters, some of whom you thought were perhaps not as dynamic as they could have been. But what about Rex Farrell, who's the
son
guy,
of Farrell
the son of Farrell Senior, who is basically the kind of henchman of the Master in this, who's
bit
a
of a
very
numpty, isn't he?
troubled individual. He's played by Michael Wisher. Do you recognise that
I
name?
know that name.
He played a villain, a very significant villain in classic Doctor Who, who then became a kind of a villain who we've seen many a time since.
Is he Davros?
He is Davros. He was the very first Davros back in Genesis of the Daleks.
Cool.
He was in so many classic Doctor Who stories as well.
Okay,
in
yeah. That's
varying
just
states
very-
of makeup and all
different
sorts.
people.
This is probably his only story where he actually looks like himself.
Okay, cool.
yeah.
He was fine. I liked how there were bits where he was clearly fighting the Master's control, and he had bits where he was like, "Oh, I don't know," and then he'd grab his face and do all mushy stuff.
Yeah.
For listeners at home, I demonstrated
He
that.
did,
and
he did,
Miles
very
probably
much. He
thought,
did a
"What
Rex
on earth
Farrell
am
right
I-
in front of me.
am
Yeah.
I watching?"
Yeah.
And he had those little bits. I sort of thought the first couple of times I thought, "What on earth just happened there?" And eventually it clicked, and I knew what was going on. But he didn't actually do a lot.
He
He facilitated the Master's plan.
He
Obviously,
did.
without him, he wouldn't have been able to do anything. But
He's
as a
an interesting
character-
one. Perhaps not one of Robert Holmes's best characters, because he's conflicted, but then not in the way of like, you can see the good man underneath it all.
No,
because
he still just does everything he's told.
yeah, there's a lovely line, a really funny sort of bit of dark humour when Mr. McDermott, who's been killed by the plastic chair.
Yes.
which we'll talk
Oh
about.
God, what a scene! I've seen that before.
Yeah, that's a classic kind of
Yeah.
bit from this story. He's been killed, and very cool and calmly, Rex Farrell goes over to the phone and buzzes his secretary and is like, "Can we get his terms of employment?"
Yeah, that is
terms
funny.
of termination of employment, please. Which is a lovely bit of dark humour, but it is also a bit like, well, then Rex Farrell's not exactly a 100% nice guy then.
But then his dad does then say to his mum later on, oh, it was kind of weird how he didn't seem to care that this chap had just died.
So I suppose that's
so
part
it
of
is
his,
referenced in the script.
exactly,
And that's because of the Master's control. I mean, that's my guess anay. So it makes sense to me.
So he's both sort of sympathetic, but then also, it's an interesting character. But the most interesting characters, I'd say, are the monsters themselves, the Autons. So what did you think of the Auton stuff in this?
I really liked it. I did like them. I mean, so
maybe bar the execution, which we've kind of addressed, is
obviously in the
not always
70s
amazing.
you have limited effects budgets and technology and things. So comparing them to 2005, which was my introduction to the Autons, at least the story was. I mean, when I watched it, I don't know, but my interpretation was there's a big consciousness that controls whatever it can that's made of plastic, and they're all shop window dummies. Obviously, there is Mickey as well, who becomes an Auton in that story.
There's a wheelie bin.
And that's it.
Is there anything else plastic in that story that does? There's the arm.
Well, that's part of a mannequin.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm sure there's something else plastic in that.
And then later on, 5 years later, you get Rory the Auton in The Pandorica Opens, The Big Bang. And I thought, well, that's not the Autons, because the Autons are always shop window dummies and they never look like people, and that's weird. And why have they introduced that now? And then going back and watching this story, they actually do that, where people just look like normal people and until you peel off their mask and they look like this disgusting plastic thing.
It's the same in Spearhead from Space as well. You've got the sort of main antagonist of that story, Channing, I think his name is an Auton, but who looks obviously like a human, but just very sort of sweaty and glossy to make him look plastic.
Yes, which they don't really do in this story.
No.
There is the weird plastic mask, but that's completely different to a human made to look like plastic. The plastic chair is horrible, because the way he dies is he grabs the chair and pulls it over his head. And
I don't know if they reverse the footage or not, or they speed it up or something, though. It
looks a bit weird.
Is it like they're deflating it and he's just sort of
wriggling and
trying to make it look like he's being consumed?
But also, when it first opens up, when it inflates, something's happening because it doesn't look right. So I guess that's part of it, I guess. But that chair I've seen in Doctor Who Adventures and in YouTube videos and in Doctor Who magazine and that chair is infamous.
It's a classic Auton death.
Yeah, and the same with the fellas handing out the daffodils. They are in Doctor Who Adventures 100 times over. Anytime there's a mention of the Autons, there is a picture of them as shop window dummies from 2005 and the fellas with the big heads.
The carnival masks, which really, as a kid, that was an image that really terrified me.
It is really disconcerting.
It's really,
when I saw it, my first thought was, oh God, no, there's the baddies. Like, I knew they were the bad guys.
There's something wrong. It's the uncanny kind of, it's the clown thing almost. I mean, this story's got circus stuff, so it's the same. It's the sort of, this is meant to look cheery and kind of approachable, but it looks really, really creepy.
And then the actual nature of the plan, getting into more of the plot towards the end, is the daffodils are going to essentially
exploit the human weakness of
breathing.
Breathing, yeah.
the human weakness of breathing.
Well, but the idea that we have this point of our face, if that's gone,
Miles is gesturing towards his nose and mouth.
Yeah, but it's clever. I think that's really clever.
And then the plan is they're going to incapacitate 450,000 people. I'm wondering how they managed to hand out 450,000 daffodils in a day.
Those Autons are good.
Ignoring that, and then use the mass confusion and hysteria from hundreds of thousands of people dying all at once to invade the Earth, which I guess they're going to start with Britain, I guess, as all aliens do in Doctor Who.
Yeah, well, with the home counties.
I don't know what they're going to do with the rest of the world, but they'll get there when they get to it. But it is actually a really
left in Britain, given how many times the classic Doctor Who invaded.
They do have a really sinister plan, which I'm very impressed by. When you think about it, I mean, when you're watching it, you think, "Oh, that's quite clever."
This story's alternate title was based around the daffodil stuff. It was going to be called, and don't laugh, it was going to be called The Spray of Death.
Sorry.
There you go.
I laughed.
And
I'm glad they didn't call it that.
So am I.
I guess it makes sense to put Autons in the title.
Yeah. I think they made the right choice there. And also because it doesn't even come into the plot till episode 4.
True. You'd be watching episode 1 and 2 thinking, where's
this spray? But such a clever idea. I mean, all the Auton deaths, you've got, chairs, dolls, daffodils, phone cords,
God, yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about the cliffhangers. We are coming there. But yeah, the Autons themselves, who have...
The Autons are proper menacing.
Different design in this. So in Spearhead from Space, it's the dummy look,
Yes.
you've got but you've got the kind of the cut-out eyes so the performers can see out of them.
Yes, and that's the image that as well as
a classic.
as well as the ones I previously just mentioned, when you read Doctor Who Adventures as a kid...
And you see the classic ones,
that's the picture you see. Those 3 child-sized dummies.
Yeah.
Shop window dummies, and then you see the fellas with the big heads, and then you see the 2005 ones. But yeah, they are completely different, which makes sense because in real life, not everywhere has the same shop window dummies.
Exactly. Well, a lot of shop window dummies nowadays don't have like facial things and stuff.
Heads.
They just sort of have like, either no head or like a sort of smooth thing, like the Autons in this.
Yeah.
Which is quite menacing. I think the blank. It's a bit like the faceless people in Idiot's Lantern that we were talking about.
Yes, yeah.
It's
not as advanced as those.
Perhaps not as advanced, but I also don't know how those masks. How could you breathe? Probably didn't.
Probably not very well.
Probably not. They probably just didn't breathe.
I don't think there were any safety checks done on them.
So they look. I mean, the only weird thing I find is that they talk. Autons talking that. Unless it's a person.
Yeah, so Rory obviously talks as an Auton.
Yeah.
So they have the capability, and Mickey does as well.
But they don't. But these ones.
They sound like Daleks.
Yeah.
But they have an autonomy. Haha, very funny, the Autons. But in 2005, obviously it's the Nestine talks. It talks at the end.
It says the words Time Lord, so
yeah, it has the ability to talk. But the Autons, They in this story they seem to have a personality of their own. Some of them, not necessarily all of them. Whereas
which ones are you thinking about?
The ones in the car that say "Move, please, let's carry on." Those fellas.
Those. Yes.
He says, "No, I must listen to the master's controls."
We are ready, Farrell. Yeah.
Let us go. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's
they
weird,
have an agenda. They are more autonomous. Whereas in every other Auton story I've seen, they are just sort of controlled and they can die at any moment. Which I guess does happen in it. When I say die, I mean go inert,
I suppose I just find it weird because these are the blank-faced sort of Autons. It's like, where is the voice coming from?
True. That's why they can just sort of make one, I guess.
Why not?
When they get warm enough.
I mean, it's a tiny thing, but I just think the Autons, the dummies at least, the fear comes from the fact that they're these silent killers. They're
true. Yeah,
the ones in Rose. In that opening scene with Rose in the basement. The terror comes from the fact that they're these dummies that are just walking, and it's like, what the hell? Whereas when they have that generic monster voice, it's a bit like, we don't need that really. But you needed a dialogue for Farrell to have.
Yeah, and in this story, they are actually quite scary. And in Rose, they are. They're certainly creepy.
Yeah.
And they are. I mean, the fact that they can kill you if you're in that situation, they're obviously scary. But comparing the two, you can't do Rose again. You can't have shop window dummies coming to life again because it's the same.
They did because obviously Spearhead and then Rose.
I suppose, but they did it in a very different way.
Yes,
and it was a modern drama, and no one knew what an Auton was in 2005.
So for this, obviously the sequel, they had to go, well, what can we do that's different? And,
and they did that.
They did.
Yeah,
they really did.
And there's a bit when they introduced the daffodils, and the master goes, "Isn't it really lovely and really lifelike and proper?" And he goes, "Yes," but they do know it's plastic. I think these days you'd be able to tell instantly that it doesn't. I don't know. There was a bit where I thought, God, they're really bigging up plastic.
They actually did that in the 70s, apparently. Apparently, I think it was like an advertisement for soap or something like that, but they gave them away in shops. So,
they said that.
Robert Holmes was going, I mean, can I get kids to be terrified of policemen, dolls, phone cords, and free daffodils? Yeah.
There was a bit where they mentioned soap, wasn't there, in this story?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, I've heard that before, and I hadn't watched this story until today. So,
it's a clever idea, and the whole, the film that goes in your face, which is really quite a scary image. When Jo's got that on her face and she can't breathe, it's quite creepy. Yeah. And the whole thing of it's your dying breath, that releasing that carbon dioxide.
True. Yeah, carbon dioxide. Yeah,
removes all the evidence.
Yeah, although there's a
morbid idea,
they do sort of when the fella comes in, the legal guy who we never see again, the
Ministry Man.
When that fella rocks up, he does say that we've had killings across the home counties or whatever he says, And that's mentioned, and then later on in the story they go, so many people must have died because of the daffodils being accidentally triggered. And I thought, who are these people? Where do they? I don't remember people dying. And then I suddenly remembered that's what the fella was
There
about.
is a very weird, like...
But also, that's what leads them to the death of Farrell Senior.
Yeah,
that's not how he dies.
No, but it was the whole kind of like, there's been a spate of deaths around that area, and let's investigate that. But there's a weird moment that I don't know whether I've just misinterpreted, but it's in episode 3, I think, when the Doctor and Joe, I think, have just been rescued from the policeman Autons, which we'll go into because I really want to talk about that. And they're in the unit lab. They have that conversation with the Brigadier, and then we cut away to the Daffodil Autons doing their thing. Cuts back to Joe and the Doctor in the lab, and the Doctor's there reading his reports and goes, days of investigation, and it's been absolutely worthless. And it's like, it's been days? Like, has it been days since the investigation started, or has it been days since we last saw you two?
I don't know what the answer is, because but it does make sense that it's been days because they have handed out 450,000 daffodils.
But yet the Doctor and Joe are in the same clothes, and we know that the Doctor can change clothes. Pertwee changes his jacket every opportunity. Exactly. So it was just weird how
they're just so caught up in this mess that they can't even think to change clothes.
Oh gosh. But yes, I wanted to talk about the scene that precedes all that at the start of episode 3, the Auton policeman. Which I adore that scene, and there's a specific moment.
Circus bash up.
The circus
bash up. They all get beaten in by
the circus don't get presented in the best light.
They really don't,
which is good, to be honest. I mean, they were exploiting animals and all sorts. But the stunts in this episode, I mean, they're a bit over the top, sure. But the moment when Mike Yates, who we've not talked about, drives his car into the policeman Auton,
the power slide,
and this guy gets chucked off the cliff.
I'm not thinking of the same thing, but carry on.
The power slide.
when the police car rocks up and it drifts into the.
It's all that classic
really
stuff,
cool. I love that.
But the moment when the Auton policeman is on the edge of the cliff, Mike drives the car into him, and he just gets thrown off, falls down this hill. This is a real guy, and then gets up.
I remember him being hit by a car. I don't remember the cliff bit, but I remember them not being able to shoot the Autons.
And this guy is Terry Walsh, who was a stunt guy who did a lot of stunts in the Pertwee era. He actually got hit by the car, and he wasn't meant to get hit by it, but he did get hit by it, fell down the cliff. They kept filming, and then he stood up and walked up this hill.
Fair enough.
So
good on him.
Power to him. But you've got a lot of stunts like that, and then also the final firefight between Unit and the daffodil-headed Auton, things. Pirouetting through the air, these massive jumps as they get hit, which I love. I mean, I'm not sure it's a bit OTT, but it's a cracking action scene.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you think of when you think of Unit in Classic Who as well. People being shot at and then they jump into the air because they've been exploded. Or whatever.
And there's all these sort of puffs of smoke and stuff.
Yeah, the bits of red sort of pyrotechnic. Which is meant to be an explosion.
It's fab. I love it. And there's like the stunt when the Master in that last episode goes up the radio tower. There's a technician just coming down for his lunch, and the Master whacks him, and he falls however many stories. It's a very morbid moment, and poor that guy, because he was literally, just in the Master's way.
Yeah,
getting out of my way.
The first thing I thought watching this story regarding the radio tower, is there really an office at the top of a radio tower?
I mean, there's always a little control box,
right? The fact that it's been CSO'd in makes me think
that doesn't help, right? Yeah,
I'm sure there is a room where they can do tech support, or they can fix stuff if it goes wrong. But I don't think the scientist works up there 24/7. He has to climb up all those stairs every day just to get to his office. I think that can't be real.
Well, you need to go to Jodrell Bank and ask them, see what it's like over
Good
there.
Reference.
That's the there you go. Have you been to? I've been to Jodrell Bank. It's great. It's dead fun. To see a big radar dish.
Of course, where Tom Baker fell to his death.
Yes, it is. Well, I think they name it's the Pharos project, but it's meant to be the Jodrell Bank, so yes. And in fact, actually, again, for the Blu-ray edition, when they redo the effects and things, they make it Jodrell Bank for Logopolis.
Okay.
So there you go. We touched on it. Let's talk cliffhangers.
Okay.
So just to run through them before I ask you which,
please, because I can't remember
some
of them.
The first one is Joe opening the box with the bomb.
Yep.
Second one is can I see your warrant card? and then pulls off the plastic mask.
Yep.
It's the policeman Auton.
Yeah.
Then the third one is the phone cord of the simply to say goodbye.
The phone cord of fatal death.
Yeah. Now, which do you like the most of those?
The best one is the policeman.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
I didn't see
100%.
it coming.
And
It
they
makes
got-
perfect sense.
They got complaints from Scotland Yard after that because they were like, "You're presenting policemen in a bad light. You're making it seem like they're,
Well, they're not policemen.
Well, I know, but
They're
they were like,
baddies.
"You're making kids scared of policemen, people who they shouldn't be scared of."
The other two are a bit silly.
Well, I like the phone cord one. I think
Yeah,
that's a very
yeah. Oh, God.
inventive one, and it's Pertwee gets to do his gurning face
True.
of cross-eyed kind of.
He went crazy.
Yeah.
And we'll touch on the first one as well, which is Joe running into the facility and trying to open a bomb, which I think was. I mean, it was. We need a cliffhanger. What can we do?
Yeah, that's the one that sort of smacks of like, I guess we should end this one here, and then
Yeah.
it's a bit too generic.
Joe
for me.
only gets hypnotized because they need a cliffhanger. I think.
Sort of.
Yeah.
It feels
because
a
it
bit
doesn't
like
play
that.
into the rest of the story in any way. The fact that she got hypnotized.
No,
that she
she
met the
can't even
master
because
or
she can't
anything
even
like that.
remember
Exactly.
where she was. So
or what he
doesn't-
looks like or anything like that.
Yeah, so it doesn't really play into it. And also, the unit's apparently in like a castle because when the Doctor chucks out that bomb,
Yeah, there's a
It's a
moat
moat
outside.
outside.
Yeah, I noticed that the office he's in doesn't look like the office I remember from when I've watched.
the unit
Doctor
lab,
stories
honestly,
before.
it changes
'Cause
so much.
the
I don't
wall-
like this one.
Because like you said, it looks like a castle. The wall is brick and it's
Yeah.
all layered, and it goes in at the windows, and it's really odd.
It changes so much, but then it settles round about the Three Doctors time
Mhm.
when you get the classic kind of Pertwee lab look, and that's when
Yeah.
it looks. That's
It's
when it
also
looks.
the one in
it looks
Robot
good
as
and
well.
plausible. Yeah, it's
'Cause
the
I've
same
watched-
one. Yeah,
I've
yeah,
watched
exactly the
Robot.
same one. Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird. I don't like the lab in this one. It's very odd. And like I say, I think basically every story it changes.
Nice.
It's not
Great.
great.
So they have no budget to go out and film stuff, but they have a budget to change the set
The lab.
of the lab.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's odd. It's odd.
What was I going to
but
say? Yeah,
yeah.
the phone call to fatal death. I do
Mm.
want to touch on that. I thought this is strange that the technician's coming in to change the phone cord.
Did you twig at any point where you're like, oh?
I thought they're setting something up here. I thought,
Yeah.
and I
Because
thought,
otherwise, it is a very odd
the
scene of like,
master's-
oh, he wants a long flex.
the master's got this guy in to change the phone cord, and he gets his ID checked, and then
Mhm.
is that Benton?
That's Yates.
That's Yates,
Mhm.
and then Yates goes, "Cool, yeah, you're fine, no worries."
Mhm.
Well, where did he get that?
Yates doesn't do
where
very
on
good.
earth did he get
Yates
that
in this
from?
story, he's checking passes that aren't valid. He's
Yeah.
making cocoa and missing the fact that dolls come to life. It's all sorts.
Yeah,
He's not.
yeah.
He doesn't do very well in this
And
one.
then the phone cord. Oh God, that's silly. It's so stupid.
The reverse
The
effect.
actual. Is that how they? I didn't
Do you,
even
do you
notice.
remember the bit, by the way? Yeah, the guy who put the phone replacement in, that is the master.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. I
I'm
thought
aware.
the way you were talking about it, it seemed like you were like, he's got this guy to
No,
do it, and I was
no,
like,
no.
no, he's yeah.
Yeah. No, because he pulls his mask off. Yeah.
obviously, but you're used
Mission
to-
Impossible style.
You're
he
used
pulls
to
off
that
his mask.
because of John Sim doing it in.
Yes, in the
World
end,
Enough in Time?
World
Yeah.
Enough in Time. I was going to say the end of the world in time. Yeah, no. So I know that the master, and he does that a lot. He's got a lot of masks. Has he got one of those Mission Impossible machines that
He
makes
must
a
do.
mask?
He must do because it happens again, doesn't it? When at
He has one at the
He
end.
gives it to
Yeah,
to Farrell,
and he does a
yeah.
quick change in there because Farrell's
Yes.
suddenly wearing
Yeah.
the yellow tie and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
What was I going to say? Phone cord. God, it's stupid. Like
But
I,
it's beautifully
I
stupid.
know there's hundreds of stupid cliffhangers in Doctor Who because there's YouTube videos, every stupid cliffhanger in Doctor Who, and I've
Amazing.
watched them and they're funny and they're really. But like, God, it's stupid. And the whole idea is he sends everyone out the room because he needs to work on whatever he's working on. I can't remember. Then the phone rings and everyone's already left. And the resolve at the start of part 4 is Brigadier, come help me, and he's just outside the door. Like he could have said anything.
And also, he pulls the phone out of the power, and that stops it. But it's like, if it's plastic, surely the Nestine can still control it.
I guess the idea
Or
is
is it the control signal that the,
the
master's
control
putting it
signal
through?
is
Yeah.
whatever, and that controls the plastic. But also, you're right. The Nestine should just have, if it can
Can you get
communicate,
a lock on and
if it can
yeah.
talk to the doll in the office, it
Yeah.
should be able to just talk to the cord. But whatever, I
Or-
guess.
yeah. Anyway,
It's very silly. It doesn't
But
really make any
it's
sense.
daft,
but
and
it
I-
is funny.
I kind of like how it's daft.
Yeah.
And I love the inventiveness.
I'd never
of
see
the
that
daft in
in
this.
New Who. I challenge whoever's the head writer in 4 years' time or whatever, or Russell can do it next series if he wants. If the Autons come back, I challenge them to do that again, but really serious. Make it properly scary.
I bet they could.
They could.
But that brings back to the whole thing we were talking about just before.
Exactly.
Of how classic Who kind of does it and then has a little wink nudge of like, isn't this a bit camp and silly? But the new series has sometimes has an angle of like, we're going to play it dead straight and, this
it works.
So
I think... Yeah, Russell should try that. I think that.
I think the Autons.
He should have done it in 2005.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of opportunity for it, and I think the Autons. It's a shame that they've not, because of all the monsters that could come back.
Especially, I remember reading and hearing a lot of people when Praxeus aired. That should have been an Auton story.
Yeah, plastic. And
after watching this story, yeah, they're right. It should have been an Auton story because. They could have had that angle like they had in this, like literally anything made of plastic can be an Auton, whereas in the new series it's typically just things that look like people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that works, and I think that should have been an angle, or they in the future should go, because if you're going to do microplastics and stuff, have an Auton take over a real human life person.
Yeah.
Because of microplastics or whatever, something like that.
A lot of commentary you can do.
There is a massive lump of floating plastic in the Pacific Ocean right now. Turn that into a secret Auton alien base.
It's all that sort of stuff.
I've just written it for you.
There you
Come
go.
on, Russell.
There you go. So on that note, let's see what people on the socials thought, Ben.
Thank you for reminding me.
You're very welcome.
Doctor Who geek Andrew Stewart, everybody. He said he really enjoys it. Delgado is phenomenal. Richard Franklin is okay, and Katie Manning is just superb, given it's her first story. Astons, I assume he means Autons, aren't a major threat, but you can still feel the threat from them, and that undoing just sums up the Doctor and the Master perfectly.
Yes.
Yes.
What was that again? Sorry.
Well, this is the endong.
Oh, the
ending.
Well, no, actually,
I misread it. Sorry.
So that's a funny. What did you think of that last line of actually, I'm rather looking forward to it. What did you think of that?
I mean, so from
I can't
wait
for more murders and more death and more terrorism.
It does come off as that, and from what I know, because I've seen the Sea Devils, and that's exactly what he does in that story. He's just a terrorist again.
Yeah, and the Doctor's like, oh, you and your japes. Oh, what a shame.
Akira.
Apparently, originally the line was going to be, well, yes, I suppose he'll be here until I destroy him or he destroys me. And the
that probably would have worked a bit better.
But the higher ups were like, oh, that makes the Doctor sound like he's going to kill him, and it sounds too dark. Change it. So like, oh, fine, we'll make it a joke. And it's like, probably not the best if you've had like a big, loads of people die from daffodils and phone cords and chairs.
But I was going to make a point. Andrew says they're not a major threat. They are going to kill 450,000 people. And then invade the world.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd say
I think the
a
Autons are a really viable threat in this, and I think they're more threatening than in. I mean, I don't know how much you remember from Spearhead, but Spearhead's just the Nestine on its own, whereas in this they've got the Master helping them,
teaming up.
Yeah, which is worked for a sequel.
Let's face it, the Master is the main baddie of this story. I'm not, and that's probably what Andrew's getting at. I'm not denying that, but I think the Autons are, an actual. They are. They're there. If they weren't there, like the Master wouldn't be able to take over the world.
No.
And
the inventiveness of the Autons in this story, it's not just here's more shot window dummies. It's like here's all these different ways that they're going to kill you. It's great. I think that is really inventive and really clever.
There's way in this story. If this was a modern story, it would definitely be like, look at all these plastic things we can use to take over the world. In this story, it's like, isn't plastic great? Isn't it brilliant? And all these cool things we can do with plastic.
Yeah.
But it is still the same. It is still the same threat. Like they are saying, look at all this cool plastic stuff we have, and we can do what we will with it. Anyway, moving on. We've got Tom. Tom says, one of Pertwee's best, and with the introduction of my second favourite villain, Cybermen being the first. I'm not a fan of Jo, but I do like Katie Manning. I feel like she better suits SJA, Sarah Jane Adventures. It's a shame that the Autons never returned in Classic, and New has never done a full-blown Auton story. I'd say Rose is a full-blown Auton story.
Yeah. I mean, interesting.
There's nothing else in there.
Interesting point about Katie Manning, but as I said, I
don't really know her that well, and I do know Katie from Sarah Jane Adventures as well, so I guess that makes
she works really well in that.
She was great,
But I mean, like I've said, the development that Jo Grant has over the classic series, I think is fab, and the point she ends on. is beautiful for her character. So yeah, interesting. Interesting comments all round.
That's all we've got from the Twitters.
That's what we got from the Twitter sphere. Why, did we have anything else?
No.
You were feeling like you were leaning into something.
No, nothing. No.
On Bebo,
on MySpace.
We
got 1,000 views on that tweet we put out. That's good.
Go.
We don't normally get that.
That picture you put up of. So I mentioned as I was watching the story, I said on a big HD telly, Nick Courtney's moustache looks so incredibly fake, and you've found the picture. I'm assuming from the Black Archive.
I went to the Black Archive, yes.
Of Nick Courtney in that story, and yes,
Looking
you can
at
see the glue, can't you?
Can you?
Basically, the white sort of around the edges. It's very. Maybe it's just me.
I just thought that was a bit of highlight, from the lights in the studio.
I thought we meant highlight. I want to get some highlights on my tash. But there you go. Yeah. Interesting conversation about that. You didn't just come away going like, that was good. You had a lot of thoughts. Really.
Yeah.
I want you to place this amongst the other classic stories that we've reviewed. So the Daleks and Pyramids. How would you rank this between those two?
It's above the Daleks.
Okay, interesting.
I think. Oh well, is it? I don't know. Like I said at the start,
Daleks is a very different beast.
It is. It's hugely different.
Pyramids.
Like I said at the start, I don't know if this is a good story or not. Is this regarded as a classic Doctor Who fan? Is this regarded as one of the greats, or is this just another story?
I don't think. I think it used to be, but I think nowadays I don't think it's regarded in any other sense than this is the first Master story. This is the first Joe Grant story, and this was the Autons.
So it's not really anything special.
Not in the sense of...
In the great wider sense.
In the great wider sense. I don't think people go around saying like Terror of the Autons is one of the top
10.
It's not one of the top 10 stories. People prefer Spearhead. I prefer Terror of the Autons. So yeah, but regardless of that, I thought... that's why I kind of wanted to show you this one, because I thought not only is it a good typical Pertwee story, it sets everything up. Here's all the characters. Here's the Doctor sort of bedded in properly.
Yeah.
I also thought... Well, not many people tend to talk about Pertwee's first one, and they sort of ignore this one a bit more. So that's why I wanted to talk about that. So yeah,
fair enough.
Keeping that in mind, that it's not,
you're
not bashing an extreme fan favourite.
I'd probably put Pyramids of Mars on top.
Okay. A lot of people would agree with you there.
Yeah, I think they would. I mean, I know that Pyramids of Mars is one of the all-time top 10 stories. So I get that. I think it's got the edge on it because it does outer space stuff. It does Space God. It does, the big, crazy, stupid, wild Doctor Who-y bad guys. And Tom Baker is the Doctor, isn't he? So I think that edges it out. I don't hate it as a story. I think it's a good story.
Yeah.
As you said, it serves as an introduction to Joe and the Master, which I didn't know it did until I watched it.
But you enjoyed both those characters. So
yes, I did, yeah. So I hold nothing against it. It's not a bad story. I just think it doesn't sort of tip top.
Very interesting. I think that that's.
Where would you place it compared to the Daleks and
Pyramids? I'd put this above Pyramids personally,
cool.
because I'm not as much of a fan of the Gothic Hinchcliffe era as other people are, and it's a huge fan favourite, and very rightly so.
I do quite like the vibe of this story.
That's the thing.
The earthbound unit nature of Doctor Who.
I love the unit family, and we're kind of getting some of that now with Kate Stewart, with Ruth Madeley's character.
Yeah, Colonel Ibrahim. Obviously not playing Colonel Ibrahim.
Colonel Ibrahim. Lenny Rush's character,
yes,
all that sort of, I like a family.
Bring Osgood back.
Osgood, and
the Irish guy from Day of the Doctor.
Yeah, the Irish muck something. Anyway, he gets like a whole character in the novelisation. It's great.
He does, yeah.
Have you read the novelisation?
I have it.
It's really fantastic.
It's the only Target book I own.
You should get Rose as well. Rose is the other.
Well, yeah, I was going to get Rose or Day of the Doctor, and I got Day of the Doctor.
I got Rose first, and then Day of the Doctor. Rose is great. Anyway, sidetracked. But it's an awesome story, so it's not too off topic.
There's a link.
So I would place this above Pyramids. I accept the shortcomings, but the shortcomings are either because it's of its time in terms of
Yeah.
the attitude / technology.
Yeah.
You know,
Very advanced phone cables, though, compared to what we have.
very
these days.
advanced phone cables. You know, the silliness I actually think works in its favour because
Mhm.
it's kind of done with a wink and a nod, and I just love the silliness. I love how it embraces it, and
It is really silly.
Isn't
and
this
it
daft?
doesn't.
But isn't it great?
It takes it in its stride.
So personally, I would place this above it. But yes, in terms of the next classic story we're reviewing, I believe it's something a bit more celebratory.
I think I know what you're alluding to.
Yeah, I think we're reviewing the Five Doctors, but it's a few episodes later.
Yeah,
down
we're
the
not
line.
doing it next week.
It's going to be around the anniversary, actually, the
That
61st
was the idea.
anniversary.
That was the idea. But next time when we
Yes.
come back,
Yeah, go on, Ben. What are we doing next
we
time?
have sort of alluded to this.
Yeah.
I did a tweet about it because
That
it was
a great
topical.
promotional event.
It
for
was
our
topical.
podcast.
It was really good. I can't remember if we've teased it on the podcast already from last episode or not.
Do you want me to do a line to allude to it?
Go on, do a line.
The moon's an egg.
The moon's an egg. We're doing Kill the Moon.
We're
doing Kill the Moon next time. I was going to say
Mhm.
next week. Is it next week? We're recording next week.
We're recording sometime. Yeah.
Yes, because we are banking these now
Yeah.
because someone's going away.
Yeah,
and
I'll be leaving the country for a month. So
Doing a Billy Garrett John.
I'm going to New Zealand for a month. So we'll be having Kill the Moon next.
Should we do the next one as well? Should we
Yeah,
tell
go on.
everyone?
Let's tell everyone what we're
So
doing
after
that.
Kill the Moon, I was going to say, should I do a quote? I can't remember any quotes from the next one.
We'll find out.
We're doing the Saranga Conundrum.
Yeah, so you'll have to wait. We're going to do a 3-week gap for that one.
Okay.
So
That'll be on
you'll
the 4th.
Yeah, after Kill the Moon, you'll have to wait a little bit longer for that episode, so that when I return, very
Yeah.
jet lagged,
Yeah.
to review the Five Doctors, that's
Yeah.
going to be great.
We're
And-
going to be. Oh God.
yeah. So join us next time for Kill the Moon.
Yes. The moon's an egg.
Yeah,
My
the moon's an egg.
It's not.
The moon's an egg.
The moon's an egg. I saw a clip of Kill the Moon on TikTok the other day, the very end, and it almost changed my perspective on the entire episode.
It's a great scene.
We'll get into
Spoiler
it
alert,
next time.
It's a great scene. So we'll see
completely
you, or
forgot
you'll
the
hear
scene
us that time
existed.
for that. And Capaldi's polka dot shirt. Polka.
Yes. That was the shirt when the action figures were released. That was like the hardest to get Peter Capaldi action
Is
figure.
it still hardest to get?
I've no idea, but I remember wanting one in 2015
Mhm.
when they came out. Obviously not the series, but when the action figures came out,
Mhm.
and I couldn't get one because I wanted that one. I got the purple one.
I got the purple
That's
one
the
as
only one
well
I could
because it was
get.
the only accurate one. But anyway,
True, I didn't even think about
anyway,
that.
I'm sure we'll talk all about Capaldi in the next one. So until then, guys, have a lovely fortnight, and we will see you on the moon in 2 weeks' time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Knowing Who, another Doctor Who podcast, with me, Miles Taylor.
And me, Ben Davidson. Thank you to Sonny King for producing our theme tune.
And thank you to you for listening. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, plus YouTube on the Tailored Vision YouTube channel.
You can also follow us on all social media channels at Knowing Who Pod.
Catch you next time for more Knowing Who.